country, we're making progress in the fight against COVID-19. But we have to remember that the situation remains very serious. We're not out of the woods yet. As we move into the summer, we'll have to keep adjusting our routines. Our cities will have to adjust and change, and our approach will have to be tailored to each community. That means the rules and public health recommendations you're asked to follow may be different depending on where you live, and that can be confusing. But right across the country, one thing will stay the same. Everyone has a responsibility to themselves and to the people around them. So keep practicing physical distancing. This is how we protect ourselves, protect our loved ones, and protect the most vulnerable. Moving forward with reopening must happen gradually and carefully. And the right safeguards must be in place, including testing and contact tracing. This is key to keeping us safe and keeping the situation under control. What reopening means for you and for your family will be different for everyone. Just take the realities facing small business owners. Some are ready to open their doors as soon as they get the green light that it's safe to do so. But for many more, getting back on their feet will be a challenge. And one of the biggest concerns is paying rent. That's why we created the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program. This benefit will provide forgivable loans to landlords so that they can lower rent by 75% for small businesses hit hardest by COVID-19. It will also be available to nonprofit and charitable organizations. As of 8 o'clock this morning, applications have now opened. If you're a landlord with up to 10 eligible tenants and you're located in the Atlantic, BC, Alberta, or Quebec, you can apply today at cmhc.ca. For landlords in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Ontario, and the territories who have up to 10 eligible tenants, tomorrow's your day to apply. Landlords with more than 10 tenants will be able to apply later this week. To landlords, please apply. And to business owners, make sure you're holding up your end of the bargain as well. The Canada Emergency Business Account can help you pay your rent on time. And the wage subsidy, which we're extending through the summer, can help you rehire your workers. We're all in this together, and together is how we're going to get through it.
As of 8 o'clock this morning, property owners can apply on the website of the Canada Housing Corporation to receive the Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program. For owners with up to 10 eligible tenants in Quebec, British Columbia, Alberta, or the Atlantic, you are able to apply today. Tomorrow, owners in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Ontario, and the territories will be able to apply. And owners with more than 10 tenants will be able to apply later this week. Whether we're talking about this rent relief or the wage subsidy, we have introduced a number of programs for businesses, and we continue to find other ways to support them. Today, I can tell you that we are launching a phone line with the Canada Chamber of Commerce to help you navigate this uncertain time. Entrepreneurs and vulnerable small businesses, including charities and nonprofit organizations, will be able to receive the assistance of an accountant or financial advisor by calling the Resiliency Help Desk at 1-866-989-1080. This initiative is particularly addressed to organizations that may not have access to financial advice. And in order to take off some of the pressure during the tax system, we are also pushing back the deadline for some tax returns. If you have to file a T-do return or a trust T3 return in June, July or August, now you will have until September the 1st to file those returns.
Every day, in every part of the country, hardworking Canadians build prosperity and growth in their communities. To come out of this crisis, our country needs workers, people like you, more than ever. Our government knows that. And we know that you deserve to be treated fairly on the job. This is something that I spoke with the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, about yesterday. Nobody should have to choose between taking a day off work due to illness or being able to pay their bills. Just like nobody should have to choose between staying home with COVID-19 symptoms or being able to afford rent or groceries. That's why the government will continue discussions with the provinces without delay on ensuring that as we enter the recovery phase of the pandemic, every worker in Canada who needs it has access to 10 days of paid sick leave a year. And we'll also consider other mechanisms for the longer term to support workers with sick leave.
Nobody should have to choose between taking sick leave or paying their bills. Just like no one should have to choose between staying at home because they have symptoms of COVID-19 or being able to pay their rent or their groceries. And that's why the government is continuing its discussions with the provinces to ensure that when we begin the recovery, every individual will have access to 10 paid days of sick leave a year. We will also be looking at other longer-term mechanisms to support workers who need sick leave.
Later today, I will be back in Parliament as we continue moving forward with our plan to get Canadians the support they need. Whether you're an employer or an employee, we're working to make sure you can focus on what matters most: getting back to work safely, adapting to new realities, and keeping yourself and others safe. You will drive our recovery, and as you do, we'll be in your corner every step of the way. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Premier ministre. On va commencer la période de questions par le téléphone. Opérateur, c'est à vous.
Thank you. Merci. First question, Christy Kirkup, The Globe and Mail. Line open.
Good morning, Prime Minister. What is your explanation to Canadians today about why your wealthy political party is accepting taxpayer money during this crisis in the form of the wage subsidy?
We know families across the country depend on the jobs that they do to pay groceries, pay for the rent. That's why we put in place a wage subsidy that is available to small businesses, large businesses, nonprofits, and charities to be able to support people who might otherwise be laid off. This is going to be an important part of the economy bouncing back, and that's what we're focused on.
As a follow-up?
When your government created the wage subsidy criteria, did you anticipate that political parties, including your own, would be among those applying for assistance?
We knew from the very beginning that it was going to be important to ensure that people could keep their jobs, whether they work in the private sector, whether they work for nonprofits or charities, to be able to continue to support their families and to make sure that our economy can come roaring back as quickly as possible once we're through the crisis phase of this pandemic. That's what we ensured was in place right across the economy, and we encourage companies to take on that wage subsidy because it is the best way of keeping a link between workers and the job they do that will ensure that our economy comes back when this is all done.
Thank you. Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Raymond Filion, TVA. À vous.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Just to come back to what you talked about and your discussions with the provinces about 10 days of paid sick leave per year, can you tell us how this could work? And what will the bill be for that? Would it be employers paying the bill? Well, obviously, those are all important questions being asked, and we are now in discussions with the provinces to talk about that. We know that we're in a crisis where companies, employers do not have a huge amount of financial flexibility. So during this crisis, governments will have to take on more of the responsibility. But one of the things we'll have to think about over the longer term is that when we come out of this crisis, it might be a good idea to ensure that all workers, whatever their job may be across the country, have access to paid sick leave. And we will be working with the private sector on that as well. But for now, we're discussing this with the provinces because this is a shared area of jurisdiction. Follow-up. So you might bring that in when? When could it start? This summer, for example? And I'd also like you to comment on the subsidies being used by the Liberal Party and other political parties. People are perplexed about this. Are you comfortable with this? Are you comfortable with the idea of the Liberal Party and other parties using this emergency program? That's the question. With respect to your first question, we're looking at a situation where in October or November, when people start to get colds and the winter is taking hold, we don't want to see people suddenly showing symptoms that could be COVID-19 and having to say, well, should I hide my symptoms from my employer? Because if they stay home, they're going to lose their paycheck and not be able to pay for their groceries. And we know that particularly in this situation, ensuring that in the coming months, when the recovery has taken hold, we will have that kind of flexibility and be able to ensure that people who show symptoms of COVID-19 will have the choice of staying home in order not to spread COVID to others. And that's the work we have to do to prevent the spread. On your second question, the wage subsidy is there to allow people to keep that connection to their job, whether they're working for a private company or a charity or another type of organization. So if people depend on their job and they want to continue to keep that job and be able to go back when the economy has recovered, well, that's why we brought in the wage subsidy and made it available to businesses, but also to nonprofit organizations and charities.
Merci. Opérateur, prochaine question.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Marie Vastel, Le Devoir. À vous.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. I'd like to continue on that second topic, particularly the wage subsidy used by your party and the other political parties. That has not been well thought of by many Canadians. Now, Mr. McKay and Mr. O'Toole say that this is not right and that if they were leaders, one or the other, they would not even be using it. Now, you and the Liberal Party are using this. You're the Liberal Party leader. Now, do you think that the Liberal Party should not be using that subsidy? Well, I recognize that in a leadership race in the Conservative Party, various candidates will be making various proposals. And I do not generally comment on internal debates in other parties. Now, we introduced the wage subsidy in order to help workers in private companies or in working for nonprofit corporations. Their families depend on those checks. And in order for the recovery to be strong, we need people to keep that job attachment so that they can go back to their jobs when we've recovered. And that's why we created it. With all due respect, I'm not asking you to comment on that. I'm asking you, as the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, whether you want the Liberal Party to not make use of that subsidy. And what do you say to Canadians who think that you have millions of dollars in your coffers and yet you're taking advantage of a federal wage subsidy for companies that have no money? Well, the reality is that there are workers in all types of industries and all types of organizations right across the country who depend on that job, who depend on their job and their salary to help their family and pay for their groceries and rent. And we made the decision to ensure that that wage subsidy would be accessible to businesses and nonprofit organizations. That is a decision that will allow the economy to come back strong afterwards, and I believe it was the right decision because we must be able to support Canadians, whatever organization or company they work for.
Merci. Thank you. Operator, last question on the phone.
Thank you. Merci. From Stephanie Levitz, The Canadian Press. Line open.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Your government, as well as provincial and local ones, ask Canadians to make pretty big sacrifices to curb the spread of COVID-19 in order to give the healthcare system time to get ready. When we look at federal procurement data, it suggests you've obtained anywhere from about 0.6% to 23% of the goods you set out to buy to help equip the hospitals and frontline workers. So I'm wondering if you have confidence that the system is in fact ready for a potential second wave.
We have received over 40 flights of PPE into Canada over the past weeks, and will continue to receive flights almost every single day. The amount of PPE we're procuring from international sources continues to increase, while at the same time we are ramping up domestic production of things like masks and gowns and ventilators, the kinds of things that are actually necessary to handle that second wave. We know there's lots more to do, but we have been delivering on the needs that we're seeing right across the country. Okay.
We know that the recovery will depend on having the necessary protective equipment for workers on the front line, but also workers in other industries. And that's why we are pursuing our efforts to bring in and procure the necessary PPE. We have already received some 40 flights of PPE, and we will be receiving more equipment soon. And we are also ramping up our domestic production capacities so that we have enough protective equipment for a potential second wave.
Yeah, as a follow-up on a different topic, the Information Commissioner has asked both you and the President of the Treasury Board to send a very direct message to your ministries that they need to be proactively open and accountable during the pandemic. Why have you not delivered such a message?
We have made transparency and openness a watchword of this government from the very beginning. And with every announcement I make, with every announcement the ministers make on help for Canadians, we've been absolutely transparent on the investments we're making as we move forward. But we recognize there's always more to do in terms of openness and transparency, and we will continue to demonstrate that with Canadians, because we know fundamentally there's an issue of trust and of confidence. And if Canadians can continue to have confidence that their government is working hard for them, they will know that continuing to follow public health recommendations, continuing to know that they're going to be supported as we move through this pandemic, will leave us all better off as we begin to recover. We know
that openness and transparency are essential in order to keep public trust. When people know that their government and that their governments are being open with them and openly talking about everything they're doing, they will have confidence not only in their future, but that the system will be there to protect them. And then the economic recovery will be that much easier.
You said in your statement that the government is continuing discussions with the provinces on paid sick leave. Where do those talks stand? Do you think that all the provinces are on board with this? And how do you see a national system for paid sick leave? How do you see that working?
The issue of paid sick leave is one that was first brought up a number of weeks ago on our First Minister's call by Premier Horgan of British Columbia, who pointed out quite rightly that when the fall comes and flu season starts up, we don't want people who develop a sniffle to suddenly worry that, well, they really shouldn't go into work, but they can't afford to not go into work, and therefore the risk of contributing to a second wave significantly could be a real problem. That's why a number of premiers have agreed that we do need to look at ways of encouraging people who begin to exhibit symptoms of COVID-19 to be able to stay home for a day or two, for the time necessary to be able to get themselves tested and possibly treated. These are things that will be essential in our recovery if we are to control the spread of COVID-19. The mechanisms are challenging, and that's why we have to work with the provinces. We've put forward a number of mechanisms to support people who've lost their job because of COVID-19, but the Canada Emergency Response Benefit is doled out in chunks of 4 weeks. And we recognize there is a need for a shorter period of time. So discussions with the provinces around paid sick leave, we're talking about 10 days over the course of the year, could be significant help, and that's what we've agreed to lead with the provinces. Okay.
A couple of weeks ago, Premier Horgan of British Columbia pointed out that it would be important, particularly in the fall when the flu season starts, that people who are starting to exhibit potential symptoms of COVID-19 be able to stay home and not feel obligated to go to work because they need money. So the idea of providing for sick leave up to 10 days of paid sick leave per year will require that we work with the provinces. A couple of provinces are interested because they realize that it could be a problem if people feel forced to go back to work even if they're ill. So this is a conversation that is ongoing, and the mechanisms will have to be worked on with them so that we can figure out exactly how that can work.
Testing and tracing, you were promising federal support for that last week. Is there any update on that? Have any other provinces taken you up on it? And how fast do you think we can get testing numbers up and contact tracing up?
Well, one of the challenges we're seeing right now is the laboratory capacity is significant across the country to ramp up testing in a large way. We need to improve uptake. We need to ensure a reliable supply of swabs and reagents, which the federal government is delivering for on the provinces. These are things that are elements of the ramping up of testing and contact tracing. We've seen a number of provinces work very closely with us to be able to ramp up either their immediate testing capacity or else solidify their surge capacity, because even though the numbers may be under control in their regions right now, they recognize that if a second wave hits, they need to be able to respond extremely quickly, and that's what we're ensuring they'll be able to do. We know
that testing and contact tracing are essential to reopening the economy, and that's why we're working with the various provinces to make sure that we have the necessary capacity, including in our laboratories, but also in terms of personal protective equipment and the ability to do the testing. Now, some provinces currently have the virus under control, but they need to be able to respond quickly if there's a resurgence of the virus, and that's what we're providing them.
Prime Minister Janet Silver, Global News. I'm wondering how concerned you may be with regards to some of the mixed messages in terms of wearing masks, the virus itself, and with businesses reopening and rules relaxing somewhat, along with the warmer weather, especially when we see events or situations like we saw over the weekend with regards to Toronto at Trinity Bellwood Park. What are your thoughts?
I think Canadians have demonstrated over these past 2 months just how serious we all are about ensuring that we slow the spread of COVID-19, that we get this virus under control. I think it is natural for, as we begin to see the economy reopening, for people to be a little confused about what it is they can do, what it is they can do, what it is they shouldn't do. And that's why we're really going to continue to impress upon people the importance of making smart decisions, of wearing a mask where physical distancing isn't possible, of ensuring that at all times you are keeping 2 meters apart from other people. There are going to need to be adjustments as we move forward. Various municipalities and cities might have to bring in different rules to help things happen. But ultimately, we all need to be in this together. We have to do smart things to keep ourselves, to keep our families, to keep our loved ones, to keep our frontline workers safe. We do not want to see a resurgence of the virus. We do not want to see our healthcare systems overloaded. We have demonstrated as Canadians that we can do this. We just need to remain vigilant because we have to continue being very careful throughout the coming months. Okay. Nous savons que
We know that we are currently in a good situation as a country because Canadians followed the recommendations. Generally speaking, they have been keeping their distance of 2 meters from others, and they have stayed home. As the economy starts to reopen and the weather is getting better, people will want to do more. But they'll have to be very careful and continue to keep 2 meters distance from others. Some municipalities and some locations will have to adjust their rules to ensure that we don't see a resurgence of COVID-19. But I know that Canadians want to do the right thing, that they want to protect their friends and their loved ones and our healthcare workers. So we will all have to remain very vigilant and follow the public health advice and keep ourselves and others healthy.
I'd like to turn to Hong Kong now. Given China's proposed national security laws on Hong Kong, other than voicing concerns, what can Canada do practically to encourage the protection of democratic freedoms in Hong Kong?
Well, we put out a very strong statement with a number of our allies of real concern for the situation in Hong Kong. I think it's important to support the citizens of Hong Kong, including 300,000 Canadians, who really want to see the one country, two systems approach to Hong Kong and China continue. It is going to be important for the Chinese government to engage in constructive conversations with citizens of Hong Kong to ensure that we de-escalate the tensions, and we look forward to a path that actually allows for prosperity in a way that the citizens of Hong Kong expect.
Ian Wood, CTV News. Prime Minister, last Friday, the UK government said that it would be further reviewing Huawei's involvement in the 5G network and phasing it out completely by 2023, leaving Canada the last of the Five Eyes to really make a decision on Huawei's involvement. Are you still considering their involvement in the 5G network, and when can we expect a decision?
On this issue, we have been taking advice from our security officials. We have been working with them to ensure what is the right path forward for Canada is followed. We are working closely with our allies and watching what they do to make sure that we are all doing the things necessary to both create economic opportunities and growth for our country while making sure that safety and security of our infrastructures, our businesses, and our people is tantamount. Okay.
We will continue to work with our intelligence agencies with respect to the 5G network, and we will be making the right decisions for the country and for Canadians and for our institutions, of course, in consultation with our allies.
Given the reduced parliamentary sittings and the focus on coronavirus, how is your government going to advance legislation on non-COVID-19 matters like gun control or assisted dying, which is up for a court-ordered review?
I think obviously work still continues throughout the government on important non-COVID priorities. But right now in Parliament, the focus needs to be on this crisis that has taken over almost every aspect of Canadians' lives and of our economy. We will continue to work to address the needs that Canadians face both through this health crisis and into the economic challenges as we begin to recover from this COVID-19 crisis. It's important that we have a Parliament and institutions that function well, and that's what we are continuing to demonstrate. Okay.
We have a government that continues to work on many different issues that are not connected to COVID-19, but the priority in Parliament and the priority for Canadians is really to ensure that our response to this crisis, whether it's in terms of health care or in terms of our potential economic recovery, obviously there's a lot of debate to be had on that, and that's what we will continue to do and emphasize in Parliament. Christian Noël, Radio-Canada. I'd like to come back to the 10 days of paid sick leave. Would it be only if an individual is afraid that they might have COVID or is infected or tests positive for COVID? And also, what about the bill? Will that probably be shared with the provinces? And how much do you think it'll cost the federal government? Well, these are discussions that are ongoing at this time with the provinces. But the concept is really quite simple. If someone starts to show symptoms of the flu or COVID-19 and doesn't know which one it is, that person should not feel obligated to go to work in order to support their family. We want to remove that vector of transmission that will occur if people in jobs, particularly in low-paid jobs, feel that they have to go to work even though they have symptoms of COVID-19. And it's a challenge, not just a theoretical challenge for a society that has to look after the most vulnerable, but it is actually a concrete challenge in the midst of this crisis. We don't want people to go back to work when they're sick. And in order to prevent that from happening, we're prepared to work with the provinces to put in place a paid sick leave program. As for the bill, the cost, well, we'll have to work on that and determine that. But the purpose is very clear. We don't want people to feel forced to go into work if they have symptoms of COVID-19. So, symptoms of COVID-19, but if someone has an injury on the leg, for example, it wouldn't apply. And what about the wage subsidy? Are you aware of the negative impact or the negative connotation that this has on Canadians when they see that political parties are using this subsidy? Do you realize that people are very upset about this? There are businesses out there, small and large. There are nonprofit organizations and charities that are all employing Canadians. And those Canadians depend on their paychecks to support their families and go and get their groceries. So we need to ensure that our economy can recover, and therefore we introduced a wage subsidy to help workers from all different types of industries so that the economy can come back strong afterwards. So this is important for Canadians, that there be a strong economic recovery, and the wage subsidy is part of the solution.
We have put in place a system to ensure that people can stay connected to their jobs so that they can continue to support their families and pay their bills while continuing to work for organizations that otherwise might have to lay people off. It's there for small businesses, it's there for big businesses, it's there for nonprofits, it's there for the charitable sector. This is something that is going to be important for the economy to come back, and that's why we put in place the wage subsidy.
Merci, c'est ce qui met fin à la conférence de presse d'aujourd'hui.
Merci tout le monde.
All right, that is the Prime